I feel much more alive now after eaten and wallowed around in my bed for a little while.
Yeah.
A good wallow and fart underneath the covers will make anybody feel much better.
Yes, I agree.
I have this tarot deck here.
Oh.
It is the Aquarian Tarot that Matt dug out of the attic of his parents' house. And I would like to just play a little game. I don't know if it's actually legitimate, and it's not because I made it up, but we're going to flip through cards and you're going to tell me when to stop. And then I'm going to read what that card means. And it's going to be prescribed to your situation.
Okay.
You ready? So I'm gonna lay down cards and you're just gonna randomly tell me when to stop.
Stop.
Okay. 10 of Cups upside down. Let's see. Get out my little 1970s pamphlet. Let's see here. What do we got here? Okay. Cups. 10 of Cups upside down. 10 of Cups upside down. See? Okay. Perfection of human love and friendship. Contentment. Attainment of the heart's desires. If in reverse, oh
shit.
Loss of harmony, anger, and feelings of guilt.
Nice.
No.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Well, I don't know about all that, but I've definitely been very stressed. I mean, maybe.
There you go. So loss of harmony. There you go.
Yeah, I'm not definitely not getting enough me time, not making enough, self-care days for sure.
I'm going to do my own. Okay. 4 of Rods. Nasty. 4 of Rods, right side up. Ooh. Material and emotional blessings, harmony, repose, prosperity, and the perfection of one's affairs. I'll take it. I'll take it. I don't know if I felt that very much lately, but I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yes. That was fun. I thought we would do a little, just a little catch up, a little,
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
We've got to get ourselves primed and ready for, a weekend of magical tarot adventures in June. So.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I accidentally left one in the box. I wonder if that makes a difference.
Yep, that's it. The spirits weren't as clear this time.
Yeah, I don't know. It's fun.
It is. Hey.
But we left a card in. So it's not reliable. Not a reliable reading. Sorry, everyone.
A spirit will visit us tonight and unveil the true tarot.
Oh, dude, today was long, but it was good. How was your day?
It wasn't too bad. So I just got over all my shit I had to submit yesterday and just starting another week strong with an incredible list of things to do, which I don't know about you, but if I know I have things to do, it's very hard to relax in the meantime until I get it all done.
Yeah, I have the sickness in that I always think and feel, and I'm working on it, but I always think and feel like I should be doing something else when I'm relaxing.
Yeah.
So truly relaxing is rare for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I know what you mean.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a good day. It's been a long day. Yeah, I visited the witch shop.
Well, that's always fun. I want to go to a curiosity shop soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this wasn't really curiosity. This is more just candles, incense, and crystals kind of thing. You know what I'm talking about.
It's good enough.
Yeah. But yeah. So speaking of mystical things, this is Freaks of a Feather. I'm Emily Wooten and
I'm Mary Boom. Hi, everyone.
Hello. Thank you for tuning in. This week, we're going to do another hometown horrors, except last time we did the Dirty South. This time we're doing the crotchety North. We're doing New England hometown horrors. There are whole podcasts just dedicated to the spooks, specters, and bizarre happenings in New England. There's a plethora. There are whole books about it. And subjects like the Salem witch trials, I mean, there are countless books. But today we're going to talk about some other, maybe, well, if you're into the subject, you'll know them, but some smaller stories. And
hidden gems for sure.
Hidden gems. But if you're like really into this stuff, which I'm guessing you are, if you're listening to this, maybe not so hidden.
Yeah.
When you think about bizarre occurrences in New England, you have to discuss the New England vampire panic. So, Mary, tell me, what do you know about the disease tuberculosis?
Well, I know I've been having to get tuberculosis tests since the dawn of time because I've been dealing with geriatric population to which they could have been exposed to tuberculosis. So it was always necessary to get the test. I also took care of a woman who grew up during, the tuberculosis times when she knew people that were in the iron lung. And I guess their maid or something like that. It was kind of a sketchy story. Their black maid. Yeah. That lived in their basement apparently had tuberculosis and she was exposed to it. Yeah. Really weird story on her behalf there, but yeah. Yeah. So tuberculosis is a respiratory illness that killed a lot of people.
Basically, it has come in waves over the centuries. You'll have bouts of TB, which it's referred to. It's a pulmonary lung disease that's caused by the bacteria Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So what it does is it causes extreme inflammation to the lining of your lungs. It can extend to other parts of the body if left untreated, like your bones and your organs. I didn't know that. Symptoms include chest pain, weight loss, constant cough, and coughing up blood and sputum, and night sweats. So basically, it wreaks havoc on your lungs so that your lungs cannot operate at a typical functioning level, right? And so people who survive tuberculosis, it's a very horrible, horrible disease. I mean, if you get TB, you have to go through long bouts of treatment, like I think 12 weeks or so of drugs. And if you don't finish the course, you're fucked. It'll come back stronger and more resistant.
Goodness.
Yeah. So people who survive it often have all of these leftover conditions. They have scarring, they have polyps, they have fibrosis. It's just really terrible. And it's very infectious, very contagious. Sort of like COVID, you catch it through the droplets from people's mouths as they're talking. So get-togethers, hanging out with your friends, hanging out with your family. That's how you get it.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
we all can relate to that this year.
Yep.
Yeah.
going downtown Worcester and hanging out with your Aunt Patty and having yourself a lobster roll. You're gonna get the TB if Aunt Patty's got it.
Which we know she probably does.
Yeah. So back in the day, it was actually believed that, and we're talking 18th, 19th century, that fresh air was a way to heal or treat TB because antibiotics and treatment for it didn't come around until the 1940s. Okay. So I know in the South, especially, they had coughing porches, all the old Victorians, those wraparound porches. they would wheel out all the TB patients in their wheelchairs, and there was coughing porches. So they would breathe in the fresh mountain air. People would actually send their sick relatives with TB to places with higher elevation, like in Colorado and in Asheville up in the mountains.
Mhm.
And so, because they thought like the air was better. And so they have these coughing porches, and I guess you have fucking sick people just spitting loogies all over the place.
Ugh.
Ugh.
Such a shame because I love wraparound porches so much. But now I'm going to always imagine that.
Mary, come here.
If walls could talk.
Oh, yeah. If porches could scream. Back in the 18th, 19th century, you've heard of it described as the consumption, right?
Yeah.
So the reason it was described as the consumption is because basically what it looks like as a disease. So a person with tuberculosis, they lose a lot of weight very rapidly. They're gaunt. Their eyes are protruding because they're so gaunt. They're pale, red, flushed cheeks. They're coughing up blood. It basically looks like the life is being sucked out of them. Thus, they're being consumed by the disease.
Mhm.
And the plague itself in New England started around the 1730s, this particular one that we're going to talk about. And by the 1800s, there were a vast number of vampire scares. Wasting away, these people had an undead appearance, right?
Yeah.
They looked like walking corpses. So, and they're they're coughing up blood, they're hacking, they're frail. When you think of Nosferatu or the typical vampire,
Mhm.
it kind of gets its take from tuberculosis patients.
Mhm.
You would have a family, right? Somebody would get sick and they would go downhill really fast.
Mhm.
And then they would die. And then all of a sudden, grandma's got it. And
Oh, no.
grandma starts to waste away. Grandma starts coughing up blood. Grandma starts having the night sweats. And so it kind of built this mythos, especially in rural communities. Oh my God, my dog just farted.
Oh,
Oh, Jesus. God,
you've got it.
No, God. Oh. Jesus, that's awful. Anyways, so they already knew in the 18th and 19th century that it was caused by bacteria, that it was an illness, that science could prove it was an illness. You could see it under a microscope. They didn't have anything to treat it. And during this plague and this huge outbreak, it's basically like having the COVID outbreak, but just not knowing at all for decades. Just being like, well, you're probably going to get it. And sorry, kind of fucked. We don't know what it is. So, of course, you have people in rural New England who come up with these superstitions to try to explain maybe what's happening. So, you see this disease traveling through families, one person dying after the other. It was thought that whoever had died previously was coming back from the dead and feeding on the living victim.
Oh, God.
Right. And why did they think this? Part of it was the ghastly appearance. They thought that they were becoming a monster. They were wasting away. They were becoming undead. Also, there are a lot of exhumations and, bodies plump up when they're dead from gas. So if they exhumed a body, it would look like it was full, like it had just eaten. or, maybe there's some blood on the lips. It's still flush, and they think it's still alive. So I'm going to tell you a little story about Mercy Leena Brown.
Mm.
So, Mercy Leena Brown, her parents were George and Mary Brown. They had 3 children, Mary Olive, Mercy Leena, the middle child, am I right? And Edwin. The Brown family lived on a homestead of around 20 to 30 acres in the town of Exeter, Rhode Island. It was the 19th century. And although, there was some scientific understanding of tuberculosis, it didn't stop the pandemic from being rife with superstition. So Exeter was no exception. In December of 1882, Mary Eliza Brown succumbed to tuberculosis. And a year later, the eldest daughter, Mary Olive, also passed away from the disease. Okay. A decade later, in 1892, Mercy Leena, who they now believe was carrying the latent form of tuberculosis that kind of lays dormant and then can come about later in life, she fell ill to tuberculosis or the consumption, and she soon perished. And then her brother, the youngest, Edwin, started getting sick. And this is around the time when all of the neighbors and friends of George Brown, the father, would come to him and be like, I think you might have a vampire in your family. You might be one of the dead women. You might need to investigate. And he was like, I don't know. That sounds kind of, I don't know. And he's like, come on, George. They're going to kill your son. You gotta do something.
They're coming.
They're coming, George. So eventually, reluctantly, George said, okay, you can exhume all 3 of them.
Jesus.
At the time that this whole thing is going on, that this pandemic of TB is going on, there are some common ways that people, quote unquote, rural people, dealt with supposed vampires. That they would dig up these corpses and they would pretty much desecrate them from either flipping them over in the grave so that they're lying face down in the casket.
That'll take care of them.
Yeah. Or they would sometimes cut off their head and place it elsewhere in the casket, cut out their heart and their liver and burn the heart and inhale the fumes. Okay.
That's not problematic with tuberculosis at all.
Yeah. So that was just a smattering of things one could do. They popped open the casket to the mom and the first daughter, who had been dead at this point about a decade, and they were stale and covered in cobwebs. They were just bones.
Oh, we can't do anything fun with that, can we?
We're like, oh, clearly they're not vampires. But Mercy Leena had only been dead 2 months, okay? And it was in the middle of winter. So when they popped open her casket, there she was, nice and pretty, perfectly preserved. And they thought, now that is a vampire. The doctor, by the way, of the town was like, guys, she's been frozen in the ground for 2 months. That's why she's not decomposed. Also, you're stupid. But they convinced George to agree to cut out Mercy's heart. And so after digging her up, disinterring her, they cracked open her rib cage, pulled out her heart and her liver, and burnt it on a nearby rock.
Oh, interesting.
They then collected the ashes. Okay. They put them in a glass of water, stirred it up, sort of like a emergency. Ovaltine. Yeah. Stirred it up and then gave it to Edwin to drink, which he did.
Wow. And wait, was
And
he already sick at that point, or
he was
the-
already sick. He was already very sick.
Okay.
That's why they thought one of the women who had passed away was coming back to get him.
It was his sister. Mm-hmm.
Edwin lived a grand total of 2 more months. And then passed away. If I was okay, and I'm thinking about this too, if I was thinking anybody was a vampire in this situation, who's the one person in this family who never seems to get sick? George, why don't we do some tests? Let's do some tests.
Ovaltine your organs.
Yeah, let's powder your organs. Hold this cross for me, George. Oh, nothing. Hold the mirror up underneath his nose. Oh, no, there's breath.
Okay, all right. Does he have a reflection? Let's see here. I don't know.
Let's see. But Mercy's exhumation and her disfigurement hit the newspapers almost immediately. She was one of the most famous exhumations during this vampire panic because of how many people were involved. It kind of brought about the light to this long tradition in the backwoods parts of New England of people believing in vampires, number one, and thinking that the consumption was a vampiric disease and that they were digging up corpses and desecrating them.
Oh, gosh.
And so people at the time who, were maybe more learned and maybe more astute to certain things were like, what? No. They what? They dug they fed the what?
Yeah.
A clipping of the New York World that had the accounts of what happened to Mercy Brown, made its ways into the papers of a London stage manager and aspiring novelist named Bram Stoker.
Okay.
The theater was touring the United States that same year, and the masterpiece Dracula was published in 1897. So some people think that maybe there was some influence there from Mercy Brown's story, but probably not, because it wasn't enough time. Like if he had already written the script in 96, it probably wasn't enough time.
Just a funny coincidence.
A very funny coincidence.
Yeah.
Typically, rural families contracted the wasting illness, consumption. And even though they often received the standard medical diagnosis, the survivors blamed early victims for feeding on the souls of the living, saying that they were vampires. It was just the particulars and there were hundreds of these exhumations, by the way.
Oh, gosh.
And one man in particular, a folklorist named Michael Bell, has studied this extensively, and he's exhumed over 80 grave sites to study the bones and the buried to see what they did to them. One of the more interesting ones was in 1990 in Connecticut, Griswold, Connecticut. These 2 kids were playing in the woods and they came back with a human skull to show their mother.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Right. And so, of course, she called it in. They thought they figured out through dating that it was very old. And then they figured out, this is an old cemetery that's been covered up. So they started excavating and they found one gravesite that had been disturbed extremely.
Oh, gosh.
They cracked open the casket, and the head had been removed from the spine, placed on the chest over 2 thigh bones that were in an X shape.
Oh my gosh.
So sort of like the Jolly Roger pirate ship flag.
Yeah.
Right. And they were like, what the fuck? And so the Historical Society or whoever called in Michael Bell, who knew all about this and was like, "Oh yeah, they thought he was a vampire. Yeah, this is typical of this time period." And
Oh my gosh.
if you want to read the article, it's a Smithsonian article called Great New England Vampire Panic. And it's a great article. It's fascinating. It's free. You can read it online. Also, the History Channel has a good article about the last American vampire. And I got all of my facts and everything from that and the CDC. Yeah.
Wow.
And we think all these, like, we think about all these people who today, the anti-vaxxers, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Also, all these people who think, I don't know, that COVID was a punishment from God, that COVID was, you could solve it through all these mystical means. This shit still happens today.
Yeah,
It
history
still
has
happens.
a funny way of repeating itself, doesn't it?
Yeah. I read a clipping from 1895, I believe, where one doctor was talking about how he couldn't believe that people still didn't believe in vaccines when it had been decades since they had been proven to be successful. That was in 1895.
Oh gosh. It's been a long, hard road.
Yeah, it's just ignorance.
Yeah. It's
it
not
really
even
is.
it's not even the fun kind of superstition, right?
Right.
Funny stories or creepy stories you can tell by the campfire. That one's just like, "Oh, that happened? Oh god.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh.
tragic."
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
can't like, just let us dig up your daughter, George. Just let us dig her up. We're just gonna tear her heart out and we're gonna feed it to your son. Oh, that's too that no, that's awful. Okay, well, we'll burn the heart first and then put it in water. Oh, that's better. I mean, I guess you could call that a New England cryptid because of the idea of vampire, but not really.
Yeah.
It's just a long tale of spooky and just unbelievable ignorance. And yeah, it's fun.
Oh yeah.
It's bizarre.
Well,
Yeah.
I've got something a little bit more out there that isn't really based on too many facts necessarily, but rather some folklore about a cryptid, okay? This one comes out of Dover, Massachusetts, in the mid to late 70s. There was
Oh,
this
yay.
panic around April 21st and April 22nd of 1977 about the Dover demon. Couple kids were out and about driving their car and apparently came across a being that looked much like an alien, except it had more of a rosy orange color instead of that typical sickly gray that you see with aliens.
Right.
Had a small head, or had a large head, I'm sorry, a very large head on a stick like body. It could stand up on, its 2 feet, and then it would travel on all fours like an animal. And its eyes would glow somewhat orange in the distance, so you could see them beaming. Nothing
So it
like
had
headlights, but it had a little glow to the eyes. And apparently, it was just wandering around this specific area where separate people had encounters within 24 hours of each other. So, yeah, I've got one story, and that tale began at 10:32 p.m., and that was on April 21st. So, 3 17-year-olds, Bill Bartlett, Mike Mazuka, and Andy Brody, were all driving on Farm Street. Bartlett was behind the wheel of a Volkswagen, and he spotted something creeping low on a wall of stones on the left side of the road. He first thought it was a dog or maybe a cat until his headlights hit it, and he realized he's never seen something like this before. The figure turned its head and stared into the light. Its two large eyes, lidless, glassy, shining brightly like two orange marbles back at the boys. Its
Ew.
watermelon-shaped head, resting at the top of its thin neck, is the size. It wasn't appropriate to the size of the rest of the body. I don't even know how the hell this thing held its head up, honestly. But
Yeah.
except for its
Strong neck.
yeah, I would say like very muscular.
Strong.
Must be very
Strong neck.
muscular, lean. But it had little spindly arms and legs, large hands and feet. It was hairless and peach colored. Mm.
Hmm.
And it appeared to have a rough
Weird.
texture, like wet sandpaper, apparently. Um,
Ew.
so
Oh,
Bartlett,
God.
the boy that was driving the car, had corresponded with a cryptozoologist named Lauren Coleman and gave her all these details and even a sketch that he later drew of this creature. Well, obviously, he was visibly upset and went home and told his dad all about it. And the story was only just beginning then. Because later that night, around midnight, a 15-year-old named John Baxter left his girlfriend's house, a girl named Kathy Cronin, and she went on the south end of Miller High Road. Now, this area is all connected and surrounded by different streams and creeks that connect to lakes. So it's surrounded by
Okay.
all of this water, which you'll need to keep in mind. Okay. So
Okay.
he was leaving his girlfriend's house and he started to walk on his way home rather than driving. Half an hour later, after he walked about a mile, he observed someone approaching him. Because the figure is short, Baxter assumed it's an acquaintance of his girlfriend. Or no, I'm sorry, of I guess one of his friends who actually lives down the street from there. John had
So,
called out and there was no response from the being that he had seen on his walk
so he
home.
just saw a silhouette walking towards him.
Yeah. It was dark and kind of overcast, so he couldn't really see anything except for kind of a shadow of something. And he got closer until he finally was like, "Who is that?" He takes a step forward and the figure starts to scurry off to the left, running down a shallow wooded gully and up the opposite bank. So that's where it ends up standing, about 30 feet away from him. It's on rocks again, of course, just standing
Up
there.
on like it's like a fence, a big rock fence that's built up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just standing there. And I guess the creature reminded Baxter of a monkey, except for its dark figure eight shaped head and its eyes. Two lighter
Ooh.
spots in the middle of the head are looking straight at Baxter, who, after a few minutes, begins to feel uneasy and realizing he had never seen the creature before, he doesn't really know what to do next. So he just backs up off the slope, heart pounding. Mind you, he's not in a car. He was walking. He's in the middle of nowhere.
Fuck me.
Like-
No, thank you.
So he ends up just going back down to the intersection of Farm Street where they, I guess, had originally seen the being. And there was a couple passing in a car and he hitchhiked home with them. So,
Ooh,
yeah.
Yeah. It's like I'm not going further.
Yeah. This all occurred in one very busy night, I'm sure. So I guess both boys that I guess the one that was driving the car and then the last boy that was walking home talked to a cryptozoologist named Lauren Coleman, and she's from Maine. And she apparently thinks all these sightings were credible and spoke with the teens within a week of the reported sightings, saying, "We have a credible case over 25 hours by individuals who saw something." Coleman believes the Dover demon doesn't match any inexplicable sighting before. So she's comparing it to chupacabras, Sasquatch, aliens.
Grays, yeah.
Yeah, all those type of things. So she's like, okay, well, this is something new I haven't heard of before. But she does explain that Dover has a very strange history of unexplained activities, apparently. And I quote her, "In the same area, you had three major legends going on, including a sighting of a devil on a horseback in the 1600s, stories of buried treasure, and then the Dover demon. I think it certainly says something, Coleman continued. It's almost as if there are certain areas that collect sightings, almost in a magnetic way. Oh.
Buried treasure. I don't count as a sighting, Mrs. Coleman.
Was it a headless horseman? Because, I mean, you never know.
It was a devil on horseback. That was just a racist New Englander talking about their friend who was African American riding a pony.
So, since strange things are happening, let's see, here in Dover, Massachusetts, there are some possible explanations made by skeptics that are a little strange. But I mean, when you're trying to rationalize something like that and apply logic, it's kind of
Yeah.
hard.
Mhm.
So people will associate it with a lost baby moose. Because apparently they can have pretty big heads and little spindly legs.
Uh,
But no.
but they don't have hands.
No, they don't, and they don't stand up on their feet like that, especially a baby who's just trying to get their footing, right? And besides that, they didn't exist there in the 70s in Massachusetts. You wouldn't find a normal moose
Moose.
habitat there.
No.
Another example is, let's see here, that it could be a baby calf.
Yeah, again, hooves, not fingers.
Yeah,
Hooves.
yeah, it doesn't explain that. And my favorite explanation is that it could perhaps be a gibbon monkey. Some species of gibbon have orange babies. White-cheeked gibbons have an orange color in females in particular. So some people maybe say, despite the fact that it was illegal to own one at that time, that maybe it could have escaped its capturer and ran into the woods to torment some teenagers late at night for 25 hours.
Naughty gibbons.
I mean,
just a disfigured atypical gibbon. It's going to be my new band name. Atypical
so.
gibbon.
My theory on this was there's something called the Manigishi, which is a cryptid and myth that comes from the Cree natives of Canada. So, according to Cree and mythology, there are two humanoid races, one being the familiar human species, of course, and the other being the little people, or the Manigishi. Yeah, these people are said to live between rocks and rapids, much like the Dover Demon, right? One of their biggest delights, however, are to trick people that are in and around the water, crawl out of the rocks, capsize canoes or people canoeing through the rapids, and spin them into their inevitable death. So,
yeah.
They even have a book, apparently, the Cree Indians, about the Manigishi, called by Troy Towson. And in this story, the Manigishi loves to hide, and he startles others by singing, "Na na na nee nee, you can see me." It's just
But I
creepy.
can hear you. I know you're on stage left.
Yeah, like, oh, yeah. Thanks for the warning. I'm going to take off now. Yeah,
and
but
I am going to towel off and get myself down to the Sunoco.
oh yeah. I mean, it's strange, but it's just one of those little folklores, and there really wasn't anything else mentioned ever after 77, other than, I guess, in 1978 there was a similar monkey-like creature that was spotted in an underground tunnel in Toronto that they dubbed the Toronto Tunnel Monster. But I guess those were small, like hairy creatures, so maybe they're just a different little cryptid that lives up there.
Hairless, peach colored, big hands,
big ass,
big eyes. Big ass. No, probably
peach ass.
Probably a little kumquat ass, a little tiny little golf ball ass. Huge peanut head.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I don't know how it held it up. Strange little creatures.
just see a disfigured gibbon in a neck brace on the side of a stone wall.
Honestly, if I were walking home in the middle of the night and just saw a monkey, I'd be very disturbed. Because it was a monkey. Just like, oh shit.
It's loose. It's from the zoo. It's loose.
It's like, I'm minding my own business. You do you, I'll do me. I'm just trying to go home from my girlfriend's house. I don't know what you're doing out here, but that's none of my business.
It's not my business. Don't ask, don't tell. I won't,
See shit.
That reminds me of another Native American folk tale, and that is of the Pukwudgie. The Pukwudgie of Delaware and of the Wampanoag people. It's a 2 to 3 foot tall little hairy creature, translated as little wild man of the woods. According to legend, they appear and disappear at will. And their most famous trick is they lure people to their deaths. They can also create fire, which so can I, so that's not that impressive. And launch poison arrows. So that is a little, they have, they're sportsmen.
They went to Boy Scouts. Good for them.
Yeah.
Good for them.
They probably killed a couple of Boy Scouts.
Welcome to our new student. I know he looks a little different from the rest of you, but we'll get used to it. Everyone be nice.
There's not really that much more about it. It's just, they're known to kidnap people, push them off cliffs, attack them with knives, spears. And it says here, especially on Wikipedia, it says here, and they are also known to use sand to blind their victims.
Ooh.
I love that you immediately went to they pull a little bit of sand out of their little furry pocket and and I'm gone.
I learned this in the Eagle Scouts. Masterclass.
Masterclass. Okay, so I thought we could end on a story from my favorite from last time, Myths and Legends of Our Own Land, Volume 2 by Charles M. Skinner, 1896. And this is Tales of Puritan Land, New England. So I thought we could close out with this story called Goody Cole. Goodwife Eunice Cole of Hampton, Massachusetts, was so vehemently suspected to be a witch that in 1680 she was thrown into jail with a chain on her leg. She had a mumbling habit, which was bad, and a wild look, which was worse. The death of 2 calves had been charged to her sorceries, and she was believed to have raised the cyclone that sent a party of merrymakers to the sea bottom of the Isles of Shoals for insulting her that morning. So basically some assholes insulted her, and then they ended up drowning, and they're like, well, I know she was 50 miles away inland, but I think she did it.
Clearly.
Some said that she took the shapes of eagles, dogs, and cats, and that she had the aspect of an ape when she went through the mummeries that caused Goody Martson's child to die. Yet while she was in Ipswich jail, a likeness of her was stumping about the graveyard on the day when they buried the child. Sure. Sure it was.
She seemed real happy.
For such offenses as that of making bread ferment and give forth evil odors, that housekeepers could only dispel her odors by prayer.
Oh my gosh. What an insult.
She was several times whipped and ducked by the constable. So punched in the face, I guess.
Only when she was good.
At last, she lay under sentence of death, for Anna Dalton declared that her child had been changed in its cradle, and that she hated and feared the thing that had been left there. Her husband Ezra had pleaded with her in vain. "'Tis no child of mine," she cried. "'Tis an imp. Don't you see how old and shrewd it is? How wrinkled and ugly? It does not take my milk. It is suckling my blood and wearing me to skin and bone."
She just had some latching issues. It'll be all right.
Some latching issues. It's called "Your Baby is Starving." It's not been replaced by a changeling. Once, as she sat brooding by the fire, she turned to her husband and said, "Rake the coals out and put the child in them. Goody Cole will fly fast enough when she hears it screaming and will come down chimney in the shape of an owl or a bat and take the thing away. Then we shall have our little one back." Very high risk, very little to no reward.
Yeah.
Very much just.
Yeah.
Jesus. Goodman Dalton sighed as he looked into the worn, scowling face of his wife. Then, laying his hands on her head, he prayed to God that she might be led out of the shadow and made to love her child again. As he prayed, the gleam of sunset shone on the window and made a halo around the face of the smiling babe. Mistress Dalton looked at the little thing in doubt. Then a glow of recognition came into her eyes, and with a sob of joy, she caught the child to her breast, while Dalton embraced them both, deeply happy, for his wife had recovered her reason.
Finally, she's thinking straight again.
"Baby, please don't burn our child to death." In the midst of tears and kisses, the woman started with a faint cry. She remembered that a poor old creature was about to expiate on the gallows a crime that had never been committed. She urged her husband to ride with all speed to Justice Sewell and demand that Goody Cole be freed. Oh, so somebody had some wits about them. They're like, "Baby, I know that it's been stressful. Okay, I know it's been hard. We've had a few rough months here. We're making it through. Let's not burn the child. And in fact, let's also not hang an old woman, okay? Just because we're feeling pretty stressed, okay?" This the good man did, arriving at Newbury at 10 o'clock at night when the town had long been abed and asleep. By dint of alarms at the justice's door, he brought forth that worthy in gown and nightcap. And after the case had been explained to him, he wrote an order for Mistress Cole's release. With this paper in his hand, Dalton rode at once to Ipswich, and when the cock crowed and the dawn, the victim of that horrible charge walked forth without her manacles. Yet dark suspicion hung about the bedlam to the last, and she died as she had lived, alone in the little cabin that stood near the site of the academy. Even after her demise, the villagers could with difficulty summon courage to enter her cot and give her burial. Her body was tumbled into a pit hastily dug near her door, and a stake was driven through the heart to exorcise the powers of evil that possessed her in life. Jesus Christ. This poor old lady.
Wow. Yeah.
I never read that before. That's fucking wild. Jesus. Oh. Oh man. That was a mouthful.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you for listening if you made it this far. And thank you for, listening to our other stuff and supporting us. And yeah, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're getting about halfway through a full year of doing this. So we really appreciate, everybody that's tuned in and listened to us, watching us grow, and I'm sure we'll keep learning. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Bye.